All right, so let's try this again. We're going to look at 45, 45, 90 triangles first, and then in the next video I'll give you 30, 60, 90. I almost decided to delete your first topic video and redo it, and then I remembered you all wanted Daniel to crash a video. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. Let's do some math. So go back to a blank screen here. There we go. And you now should have in your notes the two types of special triangles. I'm going to start with 45, 45, 90 because there's a little less to remember about them. We'll pretend that's a right angle. Just work with me. We'll kind of like make it look like that. There we go. See? Well, I can convince you, right? All right, so here's our 45, 45, 90. One thing that should be apparent here, well, since we have, I'll write it in, 45 degrees, this one should be 45 degrees. Whenever we have angles that are equal, the opposite sides are the same length. So this side and this side are the same length. I said that I want us to assume that the hypotenuse is 1, and so we want to figure out what these mystery sides are. Now, I'm going to call them both x because I know that they're the same length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem to try to figure out what is the value of these two other sides, the two legs. Now, let me see. Can I get my... There we go. I want a different color. Okay, so let's say, using the Pythagorean theorem, let's try to create an equation, because if we want to figure out what a missing variable is, we have to create an equation to solve it. Something with an equal sign. So how could I relate these two variables, x, to an equation? Well, using the Pythagorean theorem, I know that this side squared plus this side squared should equal the hypotenuse squared. So let's write, that would be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And if I plug in the values that I have, that would be x squared plus x squared, our two legs, equals 1 squared. Now 1 squared is just 1, so we'll leave it as x squared plus x squared equals 1. If I have two x squareds here together, I could add them, and now I have 1x squared plus 1x squared gives me 2x squareds equals 1. I'm on a good path to being able to isolate x, so I divide by 2. I find out that x squared equals 1/2. And in order to find x, I'm going to square root both sides. Now remember, whenever we undo a square, we get plus or minus. But we're talking geometry here. We're talking the length of a side, so we don't really want to get a negative answer. So I'm going to assume that x is positive and just say the square root of 1/2. And I don't know if you remember, back when we talked about square roots, I think it was maybe second quinter, we said if I have the square root of 1/2, oops, that's a little too high up for you, sorry, forgot math stream was in your way, square root of 1/2, that's the same as the square root of 1 over the square root of 2. Square root of 1 is just 1, so really we just have 1 over the square root of 2. But we said that it's impolite in mathematics to talk about, numbers and use a square root of the denominator. So there's no real mathematical reason why this is wrong, except that it's considered like bad math manners. So the way that we get a root out of the denominator is we multiply the top and bottom by that number. Now if you've forgotten that, this is a good opportunity to remember. I'm going to do the work for you. After I do this work, you only have to memorize the answer. But this is a good reminder. What I do is I say, let's multiply the bottom and the top by the square root of 2. Root 2 times root 2, that's the same as root 4. The square root of 4 is just 2. So what I get is the square root of 2 on the top. 1 times root 2 is 2, or 1 times root 2 is root 2, over 2. And so we have found that x, let's go back over here, let me give it another color. X in this triangle is actually equal to the square root of 2 over 2. And that means that if we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle with a hypotenuse of 1, then both legs of that triangle have a length of root 2 over 2. Or another way of saying that is half of the square root of 2, right? Because we have the square root of 2 divided by 2, so it's half of root 2. Or in trig, we end up using this value all the time, and everyone likes to call it root 2 over 2. It's kind of, as you noticed in your work today, if you put that into your calculator, you're going to come up with some of those numbers that were coming up over and over and over again in your sine and cosine answers. And so we'll find out why later on this week. But these are the values for a special 45, 45, 90 triangle. Hypotenuse of 1 and legs are root 2 over 2.